Well, good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder, and this is BRN AM for Tuesday, October 27th, 2020. Here are our top stories. Pandemic tech trends that are here to stay, and tech is transforming people data analytics. Is that such a good thing? Well, joining me now to discuss this and more is Dan Klein. He's lead advisor and executive producer for 7 Investing. Dan, welcome back to the program. Great to see you this morning.
Good morning, Jeff. How are you?
And I can tell you had your surgery, which you articulated on the podcast, and you look wonderful without your glasses, so congratulations.
It feels very strange. Every morning I get up and I feel over for my glasses, and I have that panic because sometimes I sleepwalk, as we've talked about. Sometimes I would leave my glasses in some random part of the house and then have to go on like the blind hunt for them. Now it takes a minute to realize, oh, wait a minute, I don't use those anymore. I can't read, but I can see.
Well, I hope that everything kind of regulates and looks good, and hopefully I'm coming in a lot clearer. So let's jump in, because this pandemic has led to a lot of trends, and I want to go over with you what are the long-term trends that we take away from this pandemic.
Yeah, so in some ways, don't believe the hype. You're going to see all these stories like, and I know you're an example. You moved from New York City to North Carolina, but you also already had the ability to work from home.
Yes.
So it was kind of your choice where to live. There's going to be some tiny exodus of people. There's also going to be some permanent changes, like offices are going to be more flexible about location. But don't expect that offices are going to go away. We've seen Facebook, we've seen other big companies make massive investments in offices. Now, those offices are going to look different, and you're only going to have to go in 3 or 4 days a week. You might even get hired for positions that are fully remote. Companies are going to be more open to that. But anything that says everything has changed is wrong. So what trends are changing? Telehealth. If you have the sniffles and you're pretty sure you know what it is, you're just going to jump onto a telehealth appointment. You're going to tell them your symptoms. You're going to get your prescription. You're going to find out that it's seasonal flu and you don't need a prescription. You just need to be home and get better. Those things are here to stay. That's convenient, but you're not going to stop going to the doctor. You're not going to be like, my heart hurts. Let's jump on the computer and have an appointment. Digital spending. There are some people that weren't big internet buyers that know how to buy over the internet. So they're still going to buy more things. But the best case scenario post this is that about 20% of retail shopping is digital. That's been the high point during the pandemic. So it's not like this narrative that we're only shopping online. Now, some people, like say my mother, who didn't know how to use Grubhub or Uber Eats or how to order from Instacart or Whole Foods or whatever it is, they know how to do that now. So they might do more of it for convenience, but we didn't have a massive endless change. A lot of people bought Pelotons. That doesn't mean that when it's safe to go back to the gym, they're not going to go back to the gym. Now, might some of them downgrade from, say, an LA Fitness to a Planet Fitness? They might, but I think predicting any massive changes is just wrong. Now, what did this hasten? Well, more of us subscribe to Netflix. More of us use contactless payment on our phones. The war on cash, the battle has tilted. There's going to be less cash, but these are very, very long things. And Jeff, I know some of shopping isn't just about getting the stuff. It's about the fun of going to look for it. We're not going to stop going to Costco or Five Below or lots of other stores or TJ Maxx or Marshalls just because we can get things online. It's not all about convenience and price.
Dan, what about education? I mean, if there's a segment of the economy or the sector of the economy that has been really impacted more so than others, I would say education has really been disrupted. And we've seen a shift to teleeducation or virtual learning. How about that? I mean, we're going to obviously have kids going back into the classroom, but is this a trend that we see? So if we have snow days, we don't have snow days anymore. People get on, in the Northeast, of course, not in warmer parts of the country.
I think we are going to end snow days because having 1 or 2 days virtually isn't a big deal. Though I've always thought missing 1 or 2 days, really not that big a deal. We've really penned ourselves in with these school calendars. So that technology isn't going to go away. And a lot of schools that didn't handle this well, my son's school here my son goes to school in Palm Beach Gardens, did not handle it well in March, handling it much better now. It's a mixed model. My son is physically in school because he takes television production education, there's only about 6 kids in his classroom at any given time, because most kids are staying at home and they're using a hybrid model. So a lot of times he's on a computer with the teacher in front of him, but he's looking at the computer, not the teacher. But when it comes to higher education, Jeff, I think we'd already decided, I know I had, that the traditional college degree isn't worth it for most people. I have a junior in high school, and I've said to him, I want you to go work for a year or two, and then if you come to me and say, hey, I want to be an engineer, well, that's a field that where you go to college matters. My son's not going to be an engineer. If he comes to me and says, hey, I want to be a hotel manager, well, I might say, okay, that's a job that still probably needs a degree. Go get your degree at the cheapest place possible. Go work at Starbucks for 2 years and do half your credits online. Then go to state school for the other 2 years. There's no reason, and I'll give you the money I didn't spend on college when it's time for you to buy a house for a down payment.
Wow, you're generous, Dan.
You don't, well, I have the money set aside, and if it makes sense for him to go to school because he wants to be something that where you went to college matters. That said, we've talked a lot, like maybe he'll become a plumber, which is, maybe not something that traditionally, like, white collar parents would put their child into, but that's closer to where his skills lie. It's a 4 or 5 year apprentice program, doesn't cost you anything. You're making money while you're doing it.
Right.
And when you're done, you'll be making more money than I am. Like, maybe not the first year, but eventually when you're a master plumber, you can make significant money. I think as a society, we have to think more about like these Microsoft 6-month courses. I know that, the company I work for now, 7 Investing, my boss never asked me anything about college. He knows I went to college, but he didn't ask me any questions. Motley Fool, where I came from, not a requirement. If you can do the job, IBM has been really open to hiring people and looking at different backgrounds and saying, okay, like, can this person learn or do the job? In this market, which is rapidly changing, you might not get the marketing director who has exactly the experience that you're looking for. So you want to find a smart person who can learn the job. And I think that's where education is going. I think there's going to be a big shakeout in the college system. I hope so, because it was not money well spent for my parents.
Very interesting, and a lot of change here, Dan. I think it's going to be interesting to see what sticks and what doesn't. We're going to go to a quick commercial break, but when we come back, we'll talk about HR, data analytics, and people. How is it all being transformed? You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Hi folks, Joe Namath here, and if you're on Medicare, this is important. You're now entitled to eliminate co-pays and get dental care, dentures, eyeglasses, prescription coverage, in-home aids, unlimited transportation, and home-delivered meals, all at no additional cost. Plus, your zip code may have coverage with a give-back benefit that adds money back to your Social Security check every month. Look, with the uncertainty of the virus and vaccines, you need to get everything you're entitled to. Here's the bottom line. Call to get significant benefits at no additional cost and see if your zip code has coverage with the Give Back benefit. Millions of people have trusted the Medicare Coverage Helpline. You can too. Call now. It's free.
Call 1-800-924-3920. That's 1-800-924-3920.
Welcome back. We're talking to Dan Klein of 7 Investing. Dan, thanks so much for staying with us this morning.
Thanks for keeping me.
And glad to see you, pun intended. Okay, Dan, let's talk about HR analytics, data, and measuring people, because I think this is something where we're working remotely. I think it dovetails nicely into our first segment. A lot of people working remotely. How do you measure? How do you measure effectiveness of people? That was already challenging to begin with. How do you see it?
Yeah, and it's also, how do you measure happiness? So, a lot of companies use like once or twice a year surveys, and HR analytics has found that if they take your temperature more often, they're more able to make course corrections and sort of fix things. And it's one of those things like, Jeff, I don't know. I mean, I've been a journalist most of my life, and that is a profession that's been under siege. So I had a meeting with my boss yesterday, and my boss put it on the schedule, and he just said, hey, let's have a check-in. You've been here a month. Just want to know what you like, what you don't like. And my brain went, am I in trouble? What did I do wrong? We're going to need to rewire people so that contact from HR, that survey, that boss interaction, whatever it is, isn't a negative. It's just an ongoing dialogue where you say like, yeah, I love this work from home, but I find this really hard to do a linear 8-hour day. It would be really nice if I had the flexibility between 7 and 7 to work my 8 hours. And the company says, oh, okay, like we want everybody there for the 1 o'clock all hands meeting. But other than that, just like post your schedule online. Just let everybody know when you're in, when you're not in. Little things like that. Or, hey, yeah, I love working from home, but geez, my computer setup's not great. Well, okay, we can send you this, we can send you that. That data can be used, at a small company, it's actually talking to you. At a big company, it's really taking the pulse of the company often, using AI and figuring out what little tweaks can we make to keep people happy? How do people feel? And look, sometimes people are afraid to tell the truth. You have a meeting with your boss, or there's a survey that's anonymous, and you say, no, everything is great. And I know it's a role I used to provide. People would come and complain to me about stuff, and then I would go to the boss, who was a friend of mine, and say, hey, here's what's wrong. Here's how we need to communicate better. AI and learning is going to figure this out, where we're sort of preemptively solving these problems. And I actually think working remotely is forcing this, because in the office, it's a little bit easier to take people's temperature, to see if they're working, to see how they feel about it, to see if they're, taking 3-hour lunches, whatever it is. And I'm not saying even a 3-hour lunch is a bad thing. It could be a good thing if it's part of your 11-hour day.
Dan, one of the things that I think is interesting when you look at data analytics, and you bring a lot of this up in the points you just made, but a lot of what people do, and there are people that have a very set job where they're making something or it's measurable, but a lot of my day, for example, is qualitative. I'm interacting with people like you. I'm talking, I'm trying to construct shows or something. That is not always measurable. And my concern is, do we weight ourselves too far towards a direction of relying on data to measure what you and I are doing, regardless of whether or not we're using an AI or a machine learning platform?
I think it has to be a conversation. Now, obviously at a smaller company, it's easier, but I work at a company that's less than 10 people. And I can sit down with my boss, and I did yesterday. Well, what are the goals? Okay, the goals are to get our live, 3 times a week show really humming and working and performing well for us. That's my key goal. Well, what else am I working on? Okay, I'm working on some marketing messaging. I do some writing. I do some appearances. As long as my work is getting done and I'm moving towards those goals, my boss isn't thinking about whether I'm leaving at 1 o'clock today. And guess what? I'm leaving at 1 o'clock today. He's not worried. My team was online till 9 o'clock last night because we taped a podcast. We were on a podcast, all of us. And then everyone sat around and had a happy hour. Nobody's measuring the time. We're measuring our individual goals. Did we accomplish what we said we would? And our team goals. Is our subscription base growing? Are we connecting with our members? Are we doing the things we're supposed to do? I think at a big company, you could break that down to the department level. Okay, what's our team goal? Our team goal is to get to here by the end of the year. What's my part of that? My part is to make sure this piece is working correctly. And sure, on the broader level, the data can do that. on the human level, it has to stay human. It has to stay, we're all communicating. And look, things change. Tomorrow, my boss might wake up and realize, oh my God, this channel we use works really well for us. We're going to put more effort into that channel, and we might pivot. And that's a meeting. It's a communication. I'm a big fan of talking. A lot of bosses don't talk. A lot of companies don't tell you what their goals are. And it's like, okay, I work at this company in customer service, and all I do is try to solve your problem. I don't know what the company's goal is. I don't know where they're going. So there needs to be that sort of everybody rowing in the same direction. And data can help with that. It can be a big piece of identifying trends and problems. It can't solve that Jeff has to work from home and the chair he has isn't comfortable and he doesn't have the money to buy a new chair. That's something you have to talk about with your employees.
Yeah, I guess I'm worried more of it overweighting in a decision, because it's easy to point to data, right? I mean, we're both in the, well, you're a journalist, but we're both in the financial industry, right? And you measure returns, and so those things are very explicit. But when you get to some of the softer side of things, some of the things that I think are really important skills, a lot harder to measure, Dan. And it's easy when you walk into a meeting to look at that investment performance and not think about, oh, well, what's the impact of this law or legislation on what we're going to be doing? A little bit more qualitative. So I just worry about that, and also how employees will feel if they know that everything they're doing, whether looking at the screen or doing Skype meetings or Zoom meetings, is being measured in some way and factored into their performance and ultimately their pay, the requisite pay. That to me is a real difficult balancing act.
Yeah, let me give you an example where it went wrong. I think there was a period maybe 7 or 8 years ago when it came to hiring that you remember when you were supposed to get your resume done by a professional so we could get through the computer screener. There aren't so many people applying for most jobs that a human being can't look at the resume. And one of my criteria is when I used to interview people is I would pick 3 people who were qualified and 2 people who were interesting. And I would bring everybody in and let them make a case for the job. Because in most cases, not my current job, but most of the jobs I've had, I was not the qualified candidate. When I went to run a giant toy store, a multi-million-dollar a year toy store, my retail experience had been running a scaffolding and ladder retail and rental location and factory. Had nothing to do with toys. But I went in and I had a plan and I impressed the bosses, and I was a better candidate than somebody who'd worked in some strip mall toy store that wasn't really relevant. But it takes a boss with vision who's actually looking to hire outside the box. It's one of the things, where I used to work at Motley Fool is open to candidates that aren't necessarily of a traditional background. Because if you're going to be a company that's inclusive, you have to find people that are capable of the job, but maybe need a hand to get there. So they just hired a whole new cohort of analysts, and they go through a 6-month training when they're there. And some of them are probably farther along than others, but that's how you find people that are going to bring different opinions, different viewpoints to the team. I know, Jeff, that, you and I have pretty similar backgrounds. If the whole team was filled with you and I, we're going to probably have similar points of view. Whereas if you bring someone in that looks at it differently, that's going to change. So I think data is important, but we don't want the computer telling us to hire. We don't want the computer saying like, this person is low performing. Well, analyze that person, and maybe you find that the person who's, let's say it's customer service, and one person's only helping 5 people a day and the average is 8. Maybe that person is the best in the department and they're getting the hardest cases and they have the highest rating in terms of how they solve those problems. You can't just look at numbers. This isn't, quarterback rating. And even that, when you look at sports, it's not Madden. Sometimes the quarterback with the intangibles, Doug Flutie was way better than his numbers were and never really got a chance. That's true of a lot of people, and that works in real life as well. So numbers are important. I look at data, but even as an investor, I'm much more about the story than I am about the numbers.
Well, Dan, I think it's something that a lot of HR managers or senior executives are going to be talking about. We're going to leave it there. Dan, thank you so much for joining us on the program this morning. We look forward to talking to you again very soon.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest or someone you think we should talk to? Drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news in retirement, markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, check out our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. So until tomorrow, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
But if you're tired of the same Are you being audited and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.